on the Iron Curtain Trail. In this special edition of Reporter, Euronews takes a trek along the once heavily fortified line that divided Europe into two confrontational halves, the democratic capitalist West and the totalitarian communist East. Our starting point is a former Soviet submarine base in Hara, Estonia. The war vessels are gone now, the peaceful waters frequented by anglers from Estonia's Russian-speaking minority. But today, military conflicts in Georgia and Ukraine have raised the question, is the Cold War on again?
I don't think the Cold War is coming back again, because Russia is not the Soviet Empire. It does not exist any longer. Although there is the Communist Party in Russia, it's not in power anymore. Today there is another party in power.
It's no longer about ideologies. The concern today is over growing tensions between Putin's Russia and NATO. When the Iron Curtain Trail was initiated in 2005, hopes were high for a lasting peace in conflict-weary Europe. Our intrepid reporter makes selected stops along its 10,000-kilometre route in Estonia, Lithuania and Germany. In the Estonian capital, Tallinn, there have been echoes of the past recently. A Russian spy plane reportedly crossed into Estonia's airspace and a group of Russian strategic bombers flew over the Baltic Sea. NATO says it's tracked more than 100 Russian planes so far this year. It's fueled fears among some Baltic citizens that the Kremlin is trying to destabilise the region. Moscow rejects Western claims of trouble stirring. At the Tallinn Yacht Club, we meet World Championship winning sailor Kalle Vapper. He remembers a time in the 60s when the threats were very real.
There was big buoys in water with diameter 4-5 meters, and they was connected with a metal chain, very strong metal chain, and under the water there was a curtain for the submarines. It was dangerous. I remember when I was 10, 11 years old, I started to sail in Optimist class. We had competition, start was at the river, and I was first to sail away from river to sea. And I was stopped by the border guards because they always standing on the end of the river. And one border guard took down the machine gun, pointed to me and said, "If you go to the sea, I will shoot you."
Cold War tensions continue to resonate in Estonia. At Tallinn Airport, we meet the former head of the Estonian Secret Service, who tells us of a very recent case. Russian agents crossed into Estonia, he claims, and abducted an Estonian police officer. Russia says he was arrested on its side of the border and accused him of being a spy.
Well, Russia is clearly trying to restore its position as an imperial power. I think it's an awkward situation where Russia thinks the Cold War is still on, or on again. The West tries to pretend that it's over. So we have a situation where the West doesn't know how to handle an aggressive, unpredictable Russia.
Cross's family history reflects that of a nation caught between Eastern and Western powers. In 1944, his father was arrested by the Nazis and 2 years later by the Soviet occupation force. Before being deported to Siberia, he was locked up within the gloomy walls of Tallinn Old Prison, where many Estonian dissidents and intellectuals were detained. Cross remembers the day in November 1989 when their dream of democratic freedoms became a reality.
I just bought a bus ticket to Berlin. It was a coincidence, and I arrived in Berlin and the wall was coming down, so I participated in tearing it down, and I saw the West German border guards giving champagne bottles through the holes in the wall.
Yes. On to Lithuania. Riding through a vast forest, the former Lithuanian defense minister tells us her story. Stalin deported her family to Siberia. Her grandfather died there. She was one of the signatories of the Lithuanian Independence Declaration in 1990. She shows us around a former Soviet nuclear missile base, which has been transformed into an EU-backed Cold War museum. She accuses Putin of trying to rebuild the Soviet Union.
What we see since 2008 approximately, Russia started to build up, to rebuild, to restructure, to modernize their armed forces around the Baltic states. starting from the north and ending in Kaliningrad region, and they have the largest number of nuclear armed forces, weapons.
The Iron Curtain Trail is part of the Eurovelo network. Construction's still underway, and it will take several years to complete. Crossing into Germany, we arrive at what might be called the epicenter of the trail, the Berlin Wall. Our hungry reporter joins its creator for a tourist treat, currywurst sausage. Michael Kramer is not just an advocate of sustainable tourism, he's also an MEP for Germany's Green Party. The idea came to him from the success of his earlier project, the Berlin Wall Trail.
Here, that's the complete Berlin Wall Trail, 160 kilometers long. Up there, you can see the sign. It's exactly at the same height as the capstones of the Berlin Wall, at 3.6 meters off the ground level.
The Berlin Wall was the fault line where the Cold War continents collided. At the Brandenburg Gate, we meet an analyst concerned with the East-West geopolitical and security issues. His think tank organises panel discussions involving military officers from Ukraine and Russia.
The Cold War is over. Putin himself said this explicitly 13 years ago in the German Bundestag. There will be no remake of the Cold War. We are facing multiple new forms of warfare, such as hybrid wars, as we see right now in Ukraine, for instance. And we are facing a globalization of insecurity. I do not believe that Putin is trying to rebuild the Soviet Union. He is not pursuing imperialist goals. In contrast to the Soviet Union, today's Russia is not capable of implementing an imperialist approach.
Across town at the Wall Museum, one former German border guard sincerely hopes that Michael Paul is right. Rudi Troho refused to shoot at refugees. He himself escaped to the west by scaling the wall and later joined an underground organisation smuggling people out of East Berlin through tunnels or with fake passports. That made him a marked man.
The most dangerous situation was a plot by East Berlin authorities to kill me on West Berlin territory. One evening when I was going home, an East German agent was hiding in some bushes while a second was meant to talk to me to distract my attention. At that moment, the assassin should have jumped out of the bush and smashed my skull with a kilo hammer. It was intended that the West Berlin newspaper would report it as robbery and murder.
Rudi managed to escape, but many others didn't. Eastern border guards were ordered to shoot to kill would-be escapers. Michael Kramer remembers the final killing in 1989.
On the 5th of February, at night, Chris Gerfroy was shot trying to escape with a friend. His friend was arrested, but Chris was shot from the front with 10 bullets. Why not just arrest him?
The upsurge in East-West tensions shows divisions remain. They may not rise to Cold War levels, but its chill is still being felt across a divided continent.